Rise of the Rōnin is an open-world action RPG developed by Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja. Out of the gate, you could already see two very conflicting elements being served out on the table. First, there's the open world aspect, which brings up an image of games with vast locales full of landmarks to explore, secrets to discover, expansive questlines to clear, and various side activities to distract yourself with. Then there's the developed by Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja aspect. Team Ninja is a developer best known for games with very fast-paced and ball-bustingly hard action games like Ninja Gaiden or Nioh, and these type of games are more suited for mission-based game designs. Rise of the Rōnin is their very first time tackling an open world game, and it really shows their inexperience with how to make an interesting open world. That is not to say that the open world aspect is entirely bad. There are elements of it that do work in my opinion, but I'll get to them a little bit later when it's appropriate. For now, let's focus on the things that didn't really work, its contribution to the gameplay. The scale of this game is very big and consists of areas surrounding Japan's three major cities, the port city of Yokohama, the capital of Edo, and the old capital of Kyoto. But in spite of that, the game offers little in making you invested in its world. There are very little side activities to distract yourself with. You mostly just go from places to places to unlock checkpoints, finding cars, shrines, and maybe trash chests along the way. There is virtually no way to interact with the world aside from the few places that the game allows you to use grappling hook. Very early on, I came across a man who had his cart fail over. I wanted to interact with him and somehow find a way to help, but nope, absolutely no way to do so. The man doesn't even seem to be aware of my presence at all unless I directly bump into him. A little bit later, I came across a body being hung on a tree. I wanted to take it down, so I tried shooting at the rope, but still no dice. At this point, I immediately understood that these things are not there because the game has something interesting for the player to get engaged with. They are just there as set dressing to populate the game with something, anything at all, and as a result, the game just feels rather hollow and lifeless most of the time. There are semi-random events that can happen here and there, and bandit elbows that you can clear out to bring back public order to an area, but they are all just excuses to get you into the combat. The way you traverse the world is also on the more bland side of things. You run around on foot, you can ride a horse, or you can climb in the air, and that's it. You have a grappling hook, but you can't freely swing around the place. You have a glider, but there's no ways to use it aside from jumping from high places. The player character is essentially a ninja in all but name, but the character can't jump high or wall jump. It makes traversing rather unfun compared to other games in the genre. All of these combined make the open world aspect of the game honestly kinda whatever, and if you go into the game expecting a fun theme park experience, then unfortunately you won't get it here. What the game does offer though is this. The combat in this game is amazing, however, it also has an incredibly awkward learning curve. There are 9 types of weapons in this game, 10 if you count your fists too. Each comes with a number of different martial styles, completed with their own normal attack string, a charge attack, a forward attack, a special attack that doubles as a parry if timed well with the enemy attack, and 4 different martial skills mapped to the 4 action buttons plus R1. Each type of attack has a noticeable commitment to it, leaving you somewhat exposed to the enemy's attack. The parry especially has a very punishable recovery window if you mistime it. Even in videos where the player could absolutely style on the enemy, you could still see moments where the player doesn't dare going in for the attack, instead waiting it out for the enemy to make a predictable move first. So if you don't understand the rhythm of the combat, you might think of it as rather clunky and unresponsive, but if you can come to terms with the fact that this is not the kind of game where you can just button mash all the way through, sit down, study your weapons and respect the enemy's turn, then you will be very rewarded with intense samurai battles to the death. Not counting fighting games, this is the only game that makes me afraid of doing unnecessary moves because I know I would definitely will eat it otherwise. Even after I'm used to the game, that feeling of fear never quite goes away and it's freaking amazing. Another high price I can't not give to Team Ninja is the enemy designs. This is their most crowded action game to date, with no fantasy elements, no demon or magic whatsoever. Sure, there are still flash steps and nothing personal, kiddo anime attacks, but otherwise almost all enemies are normal human beings, with the very few non-humanoid enemies being wild dogs or boars, and yet all the fights feel unique. Even the bosses that you encounter multiple times throughout the story feel different with each encounter, either by them changing their weapons between fights or them acting more aggressive and with new moves to their arsenal, so you never quite get bored going into a boss fight, except the Ito and Yamagata duo boss fight. Screw these guys. Luckily, that is why you can bring comedians with you on story-related missions. A lot of the story missions are about factions duking it out, so it makes sense that you will have allies fighting by your side. The AI has been programmed in a way that your allies are best served as distraction for enemy off-screen, and when there is only one enemy left, that lone enemy still focuses solely on you and your allies mostly just step to the side and leave you to duke it out with the enemy, only getting a quick attack or two in every now and then. Some may think of this as the allies' AI being stupid, but I say this the way Team Ninja solves the issue of your allies winning the battle for you, which was apparent in other games like Elden Ring, or the issue of your allies diverting too much attention of the enemy away from your character that you can't engage with the game's core combat system, which was apparent in Prologue. Plus, the game lets you take control of the comedians yourself. Each comes with something that you can't do with the player character, like unique martial skill or even a whole new martial style, to a wholly unique weapon like Alexandria and her whipblade. Learning to play with your comedian is just as fun as playing with your player character, and you would be missing out a lot if you just completely ignore the system. If there is one thing that I would complain about the combat, is that attacks have too much knockback. That, combined with the fact that a lot of the fights take place indoors, means that you will often find yourself backed into a corner, and then the camera just completely obscures your view and you can't see the enemy attacks anymore. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the loot system. As the game kinda follows the gameplay format laid out prior by the Neo series, you can get random loots from defeating enemies, from opening hidden treasure chests or from clearing missions, and from these loots you can make specialized character builds. Those who don't really care about the loots and character builds may hate this system, as it means your inventory will be flooded with equipment that you don't really care about all the time, and having to shift through all the trash to find the few equipment of your liking is rather time consuming and pointless. I haven't had the time to dwell deep into character building, but so far I think the build variety is kinda limiting, probably because the game doesn't have a magic system, and some of the bonuses are way too specific, like only attack plus at night time or only when you're fighting in a unruly area. Perhaps with time we will know if the loot system is good or not, but so far I think it is not rewarding enough, especially since the open world structure makes farming for specific gear a lot less convenient compared to mission format. At best, I would say that it doesn't affect the gameplay too greatly. I don't really feel like I'm gimmick myself when I'm ignoring it, thus making the battles still incredibly tense and enjoyable. I'm probably one of the very few who think that the first Neo has good story, albeit too unfriendly to those who are already familiar with the Sengoku period. And even then, I have to admit that story has always been Team Ninja's weaker point, and Rise of the Rōnin is no exception. The main story of the game is about events leading up to the beginning of the Boshin War, starting with the arrival of the American black ships in 1853, lasting until just after the Battle of Toba Fushimi in 1868, and over the course of 15 long years, the game just keeps introducing characters one after another non-stop. Even during the last stretch of the story, new characters still keep popping up. The game itself seems to notice this problem as well, because there are more than a handful of times your character has the option to ask who is who. Needless to say, if you are not already familiar with his story or are super interested in the setting, by the end, a lot of the characters probably will blend together in your mind. And beneath this flow of history is the conflict between your player character and their play twin partner, who got estranged and find themselves fighting on the opposite sides of the wall. On paper, this conflict between two original characters custom-made by the player would make for a very emotional journey if done well, but unfortunately done well it did not. The play twin character really lacks screen time and the player character is muted most of the time, so you don't really have a real reason to be invested in this plot, aside from maybe you have spent way too much time with the character creator. This is especially frustrating because the player character does speak in some rare instances, but a lot of those lines are so inconsequential that you have to question why did they even bother to begin with.
船はここまでだ。こんなところで何をしとるかしら。ちょっと野暮用でな。俺はな、あんたに負けて痛快だ。負けたことが。ああ。
The game is especially bad at creating an illusion of choice. On the game's website, it was listed that there are 3 factions in the game: the anti-shogunate, the pro-shogunate, and the Western forces. In the game, it was emphasized that your choices will determine which faction you end up siding with, but this is mostly false. The Western forces are pretty much non-existing, as most of their characters end up siding with the pro-shogunate, and you are forced to flip-flop between the anti- and the pro-shogunate factions at various points. Because of this, a lot of the quote-unquote choices are rather superficial at best and nonsensical at worst. I was rather lucky, as during my first playthrough, I chose the choices that adhere the most to the flow of the story, thus making things playing out a lot smoother. But even then, at times I still feel like a character skipped a few thought processes to push the narrative further.
薩摩の殿は有名な西洋かぶれだ。信用などできん。渡りに船どころか。五越同州ではないのか。
12 seconds later.
薩摩に加勢する。日の本の行く末を正すため、勝意を捨てて大道につく時だ。皆、どうか力添えを。
But despite all of that, I don't think the story and writing in this game are bad. It is just very clumsily displayed on the surface, and beneath that clumsiness is a lot of heart. There is really no reason why the game has to introduce so many characters, as a lot of them functionally play the same role. Like, why even have Commodore Perry and Townsend Harris both in the game, when Commodore Perry alone can act out the role of the American who forces Japan to open its border? Why have Felix Beato be in the game when he's just a guy who wants to take photos of stuff? That role could have easily been given to Igashiji, as he was the one who gives the player character a camera. Why have Yamaoka Tetsu, Takashi Deishu, and Matsudara Katamari all be in the game when just one of them is enough to fill the role of the Shogun's Faso guy? I think the reasons the devs went out their way to do this was because they care about the setting, as well as the people who managed to carve their names into the annals of history during this time. Commander Perry may have been the one who threatened Japan with his massive flagship fleet, but it was Townsend Harris who signed the treaty with the Japanese ambassador. That's what happened in real history. To fuse them together is robbing both them of the actual feats they accomplished in their lifetime. This Felix Beato guy, see these samurai pictures of the Saitō alliance on the Wikipedia pages. Those were his work. Him being in the game and having various submissions involving taking various sort of pictures is an incredibly flattering way to honor his accomplishment. The game forces you to flip-flop between factions because it wants you to understand everyone's motivations and aspirations for you to bond with and grow attached to all these larger-than-life historical figures. Yamaoka, Takashi, and Matsudara all being in the game. Yeah, I have no idea why they put these three in the game either. And it's not like they didn't take massive liberty with the story either, like I'm pretty sure there was no assassinate attempt on Commander Barry in real life, and that was the very first mission in the game after the tutorial. But the point is, love and care definitely were put into the writing, and this is where I think the open world format somewhat works, as it allows downtime for the player to spend time with characters and the locales between combat sections. Although the flow of story has some very seriously big holes in it, it generally did make me interested in the main conflict to decide the fate of Japan, and by the end of the game, I find myself with a thirst to know more about this time in history, about these characters, and for that, I have to give praise to the writing team, even though objectively speaking, I know many won't agree with my sentiment. Skimming through comments for the trailer or early previews of the game, you could see a lot of people saying the game looks ugly and comparing it to that of a PS3 game, and for those people I gotta ask,
What?
surely, technically speaking, the game pales in comparison to other Sony's exclusives like Ghost of Tsushima or Horizon Forbidden West. It can be a bit jank at times too if you know where to look, but art direction wise, the game looks fine, beautiful even, at certain places, especially the ones where you're forced to take it slow and look around during some of the story segments like the Red Light District or the Ancient Road of Kyoto. I particularly am very fond of how the game looks whenever it snows, as the white snow being dyed red with blood from all the fighting makes for some rather mesmerizing sceneries. If you don't mind the fact that there are no meaningful side activities, taking it slow and going out on a stroll every now and then would probably be a nice change of pace. Seeing as this is the only game to depict the three major Japanese cities of Yokohama, Edo, and Kyoto of this scale, you can think of it as a little travel tour across space and time. Though, honestly speaking, I think disconnected world hubs would probably do the job just as fine and save all the complaints about the empty open world, but you can't really fault the devs for being ambitious here. Most importantly, the game has a very in-depth transmog system and is honestly the best I've seen in a video game by far. You can change the look of the shirts, the pants, the jackets, the innerwear, footwear, handwear, headgear, and all of the weapons too, and there are just so many different choices of clothing to mix and match. This combined with the character creator makes this the definite dream samurai fashion game for me. I honestly am not quite sure how I should feel about this game's soundtrack. While I was playing, I remember rather enjoying the music quite a bit despite not being able to recount most of the songs. Going over the recorded footage, I think the reason for that is that while you're just walking around, there is either no music at all or they are played rather subdued and scattered throughout, but the songs themselves have very strong openings, so when the music kicks in, it is very noticeable and leaves a very big impression. This is kinda unfortunate in my opinion because listening to the songs while not playing the game, the OST as a whole is very strong and has a lot of memorable pieces. The OST, while mostly related to just background stuff, did a lot of heavy lifting for the open world's shortcomings. What didn't just cover the game's shortcomings, instead elevating it to another level though, is the sound effect. Weapons clashing into each other, steels cutting into flesh, the impact of the explosives, everything is just so brutal, so visceral and full of adrenaline pumping effects. The combat of the game honestly wouldn't feel so satisfying if it weren't accompanied by these sounds. Heck, you could turn off the visuals entirely and just listen to the sound and you'd still be able to feel the intensity of the battle. It's just that good. To be able to properly convey why I like this game so much, I need to talk a little bit about some spoiler stuff. I am about to show you a major battle in chapter 3 and the very final battle of the game. Without proper context, I think this would just be cool combat segments, but if you don't want to be spoiled, then please skip to the timestamp on screen to see how I rate the game, or maybe just close the video altogether because I pretty much already ran out of things to say. So, are you ready? Here is the battle of Toba Fushimi on the anti-shogunate side. The beginning of the mission was a run for dear life under the hail of cannon shots. Shortly after, my horse got hit with a cannonball and I fell off it. I got too caught up in the moment and instead of catching up with the horse, I decided to run straight ahead into the battle. The fight raged on and the white field of snow slowly dyed blood red. The fights with the Shinsengumi members are all incredibly hard and intense and all my victories were very close ones. In one of the fights, the boss and I even got hit by a straight cannonball, but we fought on, never minding the fact that it was a freaking cannonball that just hit us. How cool was that, huh? And here is the final battle against the Blade Twin, and I will let it play out in its entirety. This final battle wasn't even that hard, and I played very clumsily, but man, did it feel like I was really using everything I've learned throughout the game to survive this battle. I am a firm believer that video game is an interactive media, and what makes a video game truly good is the way the player can interact with it. Those cannonball shots, that snowfield-dyed blood red, that final sword clash, those weren't scripted. I saw them because of the way I played the game, and it made my time with the game an incredible experience that I cannot forget. And these are just some of the best highlights that I wanted to share with everyone. There are still more, but I don't want to spoil the whole game for you, and I really want you to play the game and experience it for yourself. Throughout my first playthrough, my mind was constantly drifting back to the game every chance possible. Whenever I am not playing the game, I keep thinking how much I wish I was at home playing the game. While writing and recording this review, I still constantly wish I could stop and go play the game instead. I'm gonna bet that while editing I too will wish that I was playing the game instead. As an open world RPG, Rise of the Rōnin may leave a lot to be desired, and its main story and writing could really have been better. But the amazing core combat, the cool battle set pieces, and the excellent sound designs really made the game for me. I am not even exaggerating when I say that Rise of the Rōnin is the best game experience I've played since Nioh 2, but its very visible flaws on the surface makes the game not for everyone. If I were to give score to the game, it would be something like this. Now that we have had Team Ninja's version of Nobunaga's Ambition, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and Isshin no Arashi, their next game better has something to do with Genghis Khan, I swear to God.